Imagine a secret so powerful that once known, it can transform your relationship with money, abundance, and prosperity. This secret is not hidden in ancient books or complex formulas. It lies within you, waiting to be discovered. Inspired by the teachings of Florence Scovel Shinn, this text unveils The Secret Money Told Me, a guide to understanding how the mind, intention, and consciousness can attract wealth, opportunities, and well-being into your life. Here you will learn that money is not just an external tool, but a reflection of your thoughts, your faith, and your inner vibration. Prepare for a transformative journey, where every word is a spark, every pause an opportunity to plant the seed of abundance in your mind. You will discover how to listen to money's messages, interpret its signs, and align your mind with the universal law of prosperity. This is not just any text. It is a key that opens the door to conscious wealth, true success, and the life you deserve. Welcome to The Secret Money Told Me. There are nights when material emptiness unveils mysteries forbidden to daytime reason. It was on one of those nights when everything seemed lost and the shadow of lack stretched mercilessly across my horizon that I experienced a revelation destined to forever transform my consciousness and my destiny. Money, that elusive presence so many fear and so many others chase relentlessly, revealed itself to me not as an enemy nor as a mere inanimate object, but as a conscious energy, a silent intelligence that waits patient yet attentive to be recognized, honored, and summoned to fulfill its divine purpose. For years I believed, as most do, that poverty was the consequence of external circumstances, a punishment imposed by foreign forces, or the result of an evasive fate. I lived in the confusion of those who consider money to be the root of all evil, or such a difficult good to obtain, that only constant struggle and endless sacrifice could bring it to my door. Yet that night I understood that true misery was not the lack of resources, but the ignorance of the universal laws that govern the flow of abundance. Poverty, I realized, is only the visible symptom of an inner disconnection, the evidence of a distancing from the invisible powers that shape matter from subtler planes. In the silence, an inner voice, one I later recognized as the very voice of money, whispered to me that all substance responds to thought, and that the word, spoken with authority, clarity, and faith, has the power to summon that which appears absent. Money is neither alien nor hostile. It is a faithful collaborator, awaiting the signal of a mind trained in dignity, respect, and knowledge of the laws of the universe. I then discovered that it was not necessary to beg or resign oneself, but to learn the art of conscious dialogue, the practice of the vibrant decree, and the science of inner reprogramming. This book is born from that revelation and from the unshakable certainty that our relationship with money is, above all, an act of consciousness. Here you will find not only techniques and testimonies, but also an invitation to transform your mind, your words, and your identity until you become a co-creator of a reality where abundance is a natural law. Each page has been written so that you may recognize in money a mirror of your power and a doorway to a life governed by the wisdom that invariably operates in the invisible. The Secret Money Told Me, based on the philosophy of Florence Scovel Shinn, we've noticed that over 80% of those who visit our channel are not subscribed. You can support this project by pressing the subscribe button and liking the video. Thank you for inspiring us to continue creating more and better content for you. Are you ready to transform your life? Chapter 1. Money has consciousness, the principle and root of all abundance. Since the dawn of civilization, humanity has attributed to money a series of contradictory qualities, oscillating between veneration and condemnation without ever truly understanding its ultimate nature. The most persistent and costly error of the human mind has been to perceive money as something alien, an inert object, subject only to physical laws or the fluctuations of the market, without realizing that behind every material manifestation lies an invisible and conscious root that determines, with mathematical precision, the arrival or the departure of abundance. Whoever reduces money to mere numbers, coins, or paper deprives themselves of discovering the universal principle that governs its flow. For the real substance of money is not metal, bills, or a bank balance, but the living energy that animates it, a force that responds, obeys, and molds itself to the vibration, the word, and the deep intention of the human being. It is enough to observe history to notice that times of great scarcity have coexisted with moments of overflowing abundance, even in the same territories and under seemingly similar conditions. What has changed in each of those periods is not the soil nor the absolute amount of resources, but the inner attitude of those who interact with money. The spiritual law that Florence Scovel Shinn rediscovered and transmitted to thousands of seekers in her time affirms that money is neither a slave nor a tyrant, but a silent collaborator, sensitive to the treatment it receives and to the image attributed to it. Just as the seed responds to its environment, germinating or withering according to the quality of the soil, money responds to the inner state, revealing that all prosperity is, in the end, the effect of invisible causes deeply rooted in thought, emotion, and word. The great mistake of those who suffer lack is to suppose that abundance depends exclusively on external factors, inheritance, wages, lotteries, investments, or the chances of life. However, universal experience shows that individuals with identical talents and opportunities produce radically different results, and that money, far from obeying only the logic of accumulation or effort, seems to follow a more subtle and personal rhythm. Florence herself, after experiencing loss, scarcity, and social rejection following her divorce, went through an inner transformation that allowed her to discover the true origin of money, the consciousness that summons it and the word that either invites or drives it away. That night in 1920, ruined and hopeless, Florence held her last coin in her hands and, in an act of lucid desperation, spoke to it as one speaks to a lost friend. Instead of cursing her fate, she chose for the first time to honor the very presence of money, asking its forgiveness for years of contempt and fear. What happened afterwards, unexpected work, doors opening where before there had only been walls, was not the product of chance, but of a higher principle. Money is intelligent energy, sensitive to the vibration directed toward it by the human mind. From that instant on, Florence understood that every rejection, every complaint, every word of scarcity leaves an imprint in the energetic field surrounding money, and that, like a living being, it remembers every act of love or disdain, every genuine invitation or every attempt at manipulation. To understand the consciousness of money, it is not enough to study economics or analyze the stock market. One must enter into the metaphysical logic of life, where every material thing is first energy, every action is first an idea, and every wealth is first consciousness. Money, at its root, does not arise from the bank or the factory, but from the mental field of the one who calls it forth. Just as a radio only captures the station it is tuned to, human beings only receive the money their inner field is prepared to receive. And all external abundance is the faithful reflection of an inner abundance cultivated, repeated, and sustained with discipline. Florence illustrated this principle by teaching that the attitude of the perpetual beggar, one who pleads, supplicates, and fears, generates in money a reaction of flight, whereas the attitude of the loving commander, one who commands with certainty and gratitude, summons money as one would a loyal dog. This analogy, far from being superficial, reveals that money does not respond to fear or civility, but to serene authority and legitimate confidence. In every age of crisis, those who stood firm in the faith of their natural right to abundance saw pathways open where others saw only ruin. Consciousness is the cause, the form, the result. But what is, in its deepest essence, this consciousness of money? It is the inner certainty that life is generous by nature, and that the universe, far from being a hostile place, is a field of infinite provision, always ready to respond to the one who knows how to invoke it correctly. Money, understood as energy, is malleable, ductile, and responds immediately to the commands of clear thought and powerful word. When Florence taught her students to speak with money, she was not referring to naive fantasy, but to the activation of an inner channel where the vibration of respect, love, and authority works invisible miracles, yet perfectly logical from the spiritual perspective. The metaphysical root of money lies in the principle of correspondence, as within, so without, as in the mind, so in the pocket. All material abundance is preceded by invisible abundance, created and sustained by thought, feeling, and decree. Florence demonstrated that it does not matter how much money exists in the external world. What determines one's share is the ability to resonate, in secret, with the frequency of prosperity. Those who cultivate a consciousness of lack, even if they inherit fortunes, eventually lose them. Those who cultivate a consciousness of wealth, even starting with a single coin, can open the channels of unlimited provision. Throughout history, we see clear examples of people who, despite adverse circumstances, managed to create lasting wealth, not because of technical skill, but because of their inner relationship with the energy of money. Florence documented dozens of cases where a shift in attitude, from resentment to respect, from fear to gratitude, from ignorance to recognition, preceded and caused the arrival of opportunities, inheritances, clients, or contracts that once seemed impossible. The law is infallible. Money is a mirror of consciousness and, as such, reveals with mathematical precision the dominant thought of the one who either receives or rejects it. It is worth asking, then, what inner image do we hold of money? Is it a trustworthy friend or a treacherous enemy? Is it an obedient servant or a cruel master? These questions, far from being rhetorical, define the level of openness or blockage that exists in our personal field of prosperity. Florence insisted that every mental dialogue with money leaves an imprint, and that every word, every emotion, every thought is a silent command that money hastens to obey, for good or for ill. The one who says, "Money is hard to get," not only describes their experience, but unknowingly decrees their financial future. The spiritual consciousness of money is not a matter of superstition or unfounded optimism, but of applied science in the field of the mind. Just as physical laws govern matter, mental laws govern manifestation. Money, therefore, is one of the most direct ways in which life responds to the inner programming of the human being. Florence discovered that by changing one's words, one changes one's financial destiny. By transforming one's emotions, one transforms reality. By assuming the divine right to abundance, the entire universe reorganizes itself to fulfill that decree. One of Florence's deepest teachings was that money, being energy, requires a clean and willing channel to flow. That channel is the mind and heart of the individual. Where resentment, guilt, or shame exist, money encounters resistance. Where respect, gratitude, and certainty reign, the flow is natural and ever increasing. That is why every outer transformation begins with an inner reconciliation with money, asking its forgiveness for years of mistreatment and committing to a new relationship based on mutual recognition and conscious collaboration. The analogy of money as a partner is no empty metaphor. A partner requires communication, respect, and clear agreements. Just as no one prospers in a partnership where distrust and hostility prevail, no one prospers with money if inwardly they despise or fear it. Florence invited her students to write letters to money, to speak with it every morning, to bless it, and to ask its guidance before making important decisions. These rituals, far from being mere formalities, act upon the vibratory field, adjusting the relationship and opening new channels of provision. Money, ultimately, is both guide and mirror. It reflects the value we assign to ourselves, the clarity of our intention, and the purity of our purpose. Those who unknowingly see money as an enemy become enemies of their own creative and receptive capacity. Those who honor and recognize it activate within themselves the divine permission to prosper. Florence taught that wealth is not the privilege of a few, but the right of all who align with the law of respect and conscious communication. If you wish to transform your relationship with money, the first step is to stop seeing it as an external object and to begin recognizing it as a living energy, intelligent and willing to serve the one who knows how to address it with the authority of certainty and gratitude. Observe your thoughts, guard your words, watch the emotion with which you speak about money, and you will discover that as your inner world changes, the outer world responds with equal fidelity. Consciousness precedes form, and wealth in every time and place is always the child of a mind that knew how to recognize the secret of money, its conscious nature and its obedience to the law of the mind. Thus begins the path of true abundance, by recognizing that money is, before anything else, an expression of consciousness and a response of the universe to the words you speak and the attitude you sustain. This is the principle, the root, and the key for abundance to cease being a mystery and become your daily experience. The choice is yours and the law is infallible. What are you saying to money today? And what are you willing to hear from it in return? The answers to these questions mark the true beginning of your prosperity. Chapter 2. The Law of Command, Decree and it shall be given to you. Among Florence Scovel Shinn's greatest discoveries, none carries greater transformative power than the understanding of the radical difference between asking and commanding, between begging for abundance and exercising the divine authority that belongs to every human being by natural right. For centuries, most have walked their financial path with the attitude of a beggar, hoping for miracles, pleading for favors, fearing scarcity, and justifying their poverty before the universe as if it were an irremediable condition. Florence observed that this pattern, sustained both in popular religion and in worldly economics, leads inevitably to stagnation and frustration. However, the metaphysical law, eternal, infallible, and impersonal, responds only to the vibration of authority, to the certainty of one who knows that decree is the key that opens all the invisible doors of provision. The act of asking, though sincere, is often tinged with doubt, fear, and lack. The one who asks usually does so from a consciousness of not having, transmitting through their words a weak vibration that barely stirs the subtle forces governing manifestation. Begging, in turn, is the extreme expression of impotence, for one who begs implicitly acknowledges the superiority of lack over their divine right. The universe, guided by exact laws, does not respond to lament or supplication, but to the command pronounced with full conviction. Florence often repeated to her students, "Do not beg for what is already yours by divine inheritance. Claim it as one who picks up what rightfully belongs to them." The foundation of spiritual authority lies in the conscious recognition that the human being is child and heir of the creative principle, not a stranger in the universe, nor a beggar at the door of abundance. This authority is neither arrogance nor whim, but alignment with the law that sustains all things, a law that responds to the spoken word of certainty and to the inner attitude of one who knows their command echoes in the invisible planes. Just as an architect orders the construction of a house from a clear design and precise instructions, whoever desires to manifest wealth must issue their decree from an exact vision, without hesitation or contradiction. The universe, in its perfect order, does not respond to confused petitions, but to defined commands. Florence illustrated this difference with examples from her own experience and that of her students. She tells of Margaret, who for years prayed for prosperity without visible results, until she realized that she should not ask money but command it. The day she adopted the attitude of a queen in her own kingdom and pronounced the decree, "Divine money, I command you to flow to me now from all possible directions," something invisible shifted in her environment. Instead of waiting, she began to act and think, as one who knows the order has been received and executed. In less than a month, unexpected opportunities arrived, forgotten resources reappeared, and support emerged that could never have been predicted by rational means. Margaret had moved from the vibration of lack to the vibration of command, and the law of the universe was activated in her favor. The spiritual science behind decree rests on the understanding that every word spoken with authority, charged with legitimate emotion, and sustained by a posture of certainty, reconfigures the personal energy field and moves the invisible gears that bring into form that which has been commanded. This is not illusion nor fantasy, but a rigorous application of the law of mentalism, according to which thought sustained with power becomes visible reality. Florence warned her students of the importance of tone, intention, and emotional state at the moment of issuing a decree. A hesitant or contradictory command has no force. A firm command, spoken from the center of inner authority, has the power to mobilize invisible legions of provision. Her original protocol for issuing effective commands left no room for improvisation or doubt. Establish a state of mental stillness, breathing deeply until the mind quiets and the heart aligns with the intention. Choose exact words, clear, specific, and without ambiguity, using the structure, "By my divine authority, I command money to flow to me now, multiplied and blessed, to fulfill my life's purpose." Anchor the decree with emotional conviction. It is not spoken as one who hopes for a response, but as one who knows the law is already fulfilling the mandate. After giving the command, maintain the emotional posture of absolute certainty throughout the day, acting accordingly and repeating inwardly, "My divine command is being executed now." Florence insisted that the universe does not respond to anxiety, but to confident patience. Impatience is equivalent to cancelling the order, for it transmits the message of doubting the law's efficacy. True accounts from her students abound in Florence's archives. Sarah, for example, an experienced accountant, realized her technical knowledge alone was not enough to transform her financial reality. She began to use the command with mathematical precision, declaring every morning before the mirror, "Divine money, you obey my word and multiply now in my life." The results manifested as unexpected clients, prosperous investments, and a sharpened intuition for wise decisions. Sarah confirmed that money, far from being capricious, is obedient to the voice of one who calls it with legitimate authority. It is important to clarify, as Florence taught, that the law of command is not a method of manipulation or control over others. It is not about seizing, competing, or demanding from the ego, but about aligning with the natural flow of universal provision, recognizing that all true abundance is grounded in service, gratitude, and contribution. The divine command is always specific, legitimate, and never harms another being. It operates within the law of good, multiplying blessing for all involved. Florence emphasized that money, which comes as the result of a pure and legitimate decree, always brings peace, expansion, and the opportunity to bless others. The vibration of command is the keynote that activates the invisible laws. In music, a tuned note resonates and makes the entire instrument vibrate. In the field of the mind, a tuned decree makes circumstances, encounters, ideas, and opportunities vibrate. Thus, Florence advised repeating the command not from obsession, but from full trust, renewing it each morning as one gives instructions to a perfectly trained team. "Money is like a well-trained dog," Florence used to say. "It comes when it is called with clarity and confidence, but it flees before a doubtful or fearful voice." The fundamental difference between asking and commanding is that the one who asks yields control, while the one who commands assumes responsibility and recognizes their creative power. The universe, in its absolute precision, does not judge but faithfully executes the dominant vibration. If the word is a command, life responds like a perfectly disciplined army. If the word is a plea, the response is hesitant and limited. Florence invited her readers to observe their daily language. How do you speak of money? With serene authority or with fear and resignation? Every phrase is a seed, every word a decree that sooner or later returns multiplied. To consolidate the process, Florence established the importance of acting in coherence with the command given. After ordering the arrival and multiplication of money, it is essential to make decisions, create plans, and proceed as one who has already received the answer. This coherence between thought, word, and action is what solidifies the new reality and cancels any contradictory vibration. Documented cases from her practice show that those students who maintained this coherence saw quick and sustained results, while those who doubted, contradicted themselves, or waited passively perpetuated uncertainty and scarcity. The act of commanding is not arrogance nor presumption. It is the legitimate expression of the soul conscious of its right and duty to co-create reality in alliance with the divine principle. Florence often asked her students, "Do you dare to command your good, or are you still waiting for someone else to decide it for you?" This question, far from rhetorical, sought to awaken in the reader the awareness that the only obstacle between them and abundance is their indecision regarding their own authority. Finally, Florence's complete protocol can be summarized as follows. Prepare the mind and heart in silence, creating a state of calm and openness. Choose clear, specific words charged with legitimate emotion, avoiding ambiguity. Speak the command aloud before the mirror if possible, feeling the reality of the decree. Maintain an emotional posture of absolute certainty throughout the day, acting accordingly. Repeat the process daily, strengthening inner authority and observing results with gratitude and loving vigilance. This is how the law of command operates, not by chance nor exception, but by the precision of a mental universe that responds, without possible error, to the voice of one who recognizes themselves as heir to divine abundance. The choice to command rather than ask is the doorway into a life of continuous miracles, where the word is the magic wand that shapes wealth, and certainty is the key that unlocks all invisible treasures. Are you ready to stop asking and begin commanding your good? The answer lies in your word and in the vibration with which you pronounce it. The universe stands ready to obey the order you can now issue as the legitimate commander of your financial destiny. Chapter 3. The Creative Word. The Power of I Am Divine Abundance. Throughout the centuries, the deepest spiritual traditions have insisted on a fundamental fact, though often forgotten or trivialized. The word is the primordial seed of every experience, and nothing in the material world happens unless it has first been spoken, decreed, or defined by the conscious verb. Florence Scovel Shinn, after years of study and direct experimentation, confirmed that the spoken word, charged with emotion and certainty, is the supreme instrument for shaping the invisible substance of the universe. Within her vast legacy, no teaching has proven more powerful and accessible than the formula contained in 3 words: I am divine abundance. This is not a simple, empty affirmation, but a precise decree calibrated to activate the mental law and cosmic vibration, capable of reorganizing any financial reality, regardless of its starting point. The first step, and also the greatest obstacle, is humanity's tendency to pronounce words without awareness, repeating phrases out of habit, fear, or desire, yet without understanding the power they carry or the metaphysical logic behind them. Florence warned that the difference between a mere wish, an affirmation, and a decree is as radical as the difference between a spark and a wildfire. Only the decree, infused with identity and certainty, can move the deep mechanisms of the universe. By declaring I am divine abundance, the individual stops placing wealth outside of themselves and assumes their role as channel and original cause of all provision. Each of these 3 words has a specific purpose, a determined vibration, and an indispensable function. The word I am is the primordial declaration of identity. In the spiritual realm, no greater power exists than the power exercised over one's own being, for identity is the anchor point of every subsequent phenomenon. To say I am is not to say I want to be or I hope to be. It is to stand in the absolute present of creation, claiming the role of cause, not effect. Florence taught that the conscious use of I am in decrees is the key that activates the deepest resources of the subconscious mind, which, like a perfect servant, executes everything the self recognizes as its own, without judgment or correction. The second word, abundance, defines the desired quality, the specific frequency that the decree will manifest. Abundance, rightly understood, is not merely the possession of material goods, but the continuous, unbroken, and expansive flow of every possible good. Ideas, opportunities, solutions, health, relationships, and of course, money. Florence insisted that abundance is not something obtained from the outside, but a frequency allowed to express itself from within. By declaring I am abundance, the individual deactivates the vibration of lack and places their mind in the carrier wave of everything that multiplies, circulates, and expands. The third word, divine, connects the decree to the supreme source, removing the possibility that abundance could be limited by human laws, social conditions, or external circumstances. Declaring divine is not a pious ornament, but the affirmation that provision is unlimited, inexhaustible, and backed by the very principle that sustains the universe. Florence clarified to her students that by adding divine to the decree, one transcends the logic of competition and struggle, establishing an alliance with the infinite current of the universal mind. Thus, I am divine. Abundance leaves no room for doubt, for all authority, supply, and protection reside in that pronounced identity. The exact ritual to activate this formula was perfected by Florence over decades, after observing the subtle distinctions that separate success from failure in the use of the word. It is not enough to mechanically repeat the 3 words. They must be integrated with the whole being, both consciously and subconsciously. The process begins by placing both hands over the heart, closing the eyes, and taking 3 slow, deep breaths until the mind feels quiet and the body enters a receptive state. This gesture is not superstition, but a way of gathering energy and focusing attention, creating the vibrational environment suitable for planting the word. Next, the practitioner must look directly into their own eyes in a mirror, for the direct gaze activates the witness consciousness and engraves the decree at the deepest level of the subconscious. Florence explained that the mirror is not a simple object, but a portal to one's true identity. In seeing oneself, one not only observes but recognizes, and every word spoken in that moment penetrates the innermost layers of being. In this state of concentration, the phrase "I am divine abundance" is to be repeated slowly, with a firm and confident tone, exactly 33 times every morning. The choice of number is not arbitrary. In metaphysics, 33 symbolizes mastery and fulfillment. Repetition imprints the vibration into the personal energy field. The minimum recommended period for this practice is 90 uninterrupted days, long enough for the subconscious to replace any prior programming of lack with the new identity of abundance. Florence documented countless cases where, even before completing this cycle, progressive changes began to manifest. First, small unexpected incomes or improvised solutions, then increasing opportunities, and finally extraordinary manifestations such as inheritances, prosperous businesses, or financial rescues impossible to predict by ordinary means. The metaphysical explanation for this process lies in the fact that the word, vibrating in space and body, reorganizes the quantum structure of reality. In simple terms, reality is neither fixed nor predetermined, but a flexible matrix sensitive to the dominant vibration of the observer who defines it. Each time the decree is spoken with full conviction, a coherent signal is emitted that informs the quantum field of the new state to be manifested. Florence affirmed that the word is the architectural order upon which matter and circumstances align to form the desired result. It is essential to distinguish between affirmation, decree, and vibration, for though related, they are not identical. An affirmation is the repetition of a desired idea, often used without full conviction or identity consciousness. A decree, however, is the command issued by the inner authority, charged with certainty and directed to the universe as an unquestionable mandate. Vibration, in turn, is the energetic result of word, emotion, and intention combined. It permeates the aura and determines the quality of the experiences attracted. Florence warned that an affirmation without proper vibration lacks power, while a decree spoken with the right vibration is irresistible to universal law. Over the years, Florence gathered documented cases that illustrate the power of this method. Maria, for example, lived in absolute poverty until, after reading about the 3 words, she decided to apply the protocol to the letter. In less than 3 months, she not only doubled her income but also received an unexpected inheritance from a distant aunt, exactly as her decree had set in motion. Sophia, an immigrant with no resources, applied the same formula and within 6 months built the most prosperous business in her neighborhood. The common denominator in all these stories was not luck or talent, but total identification with the spoken word, perseverance in the ritual, and the absence of doubt throughout the process. The reader must understand that transforming identity is the ultimate goal of this chapter. It is not enough to merely seek more money. One must become the cause of abundance, claiming the divine right to prosper and manifesting in every thought, word, and action the certainty of being the perfect channel of universal wealth. When the decree, "I am divine abundance," ceases to be an external phrase and becomes a personal definition, the flow of provision turns natural, permanent, and ever-growing. Florence advised that during the 90-day period, one should avoid all conversations, news, or influences that promote scarcity, fear, or discouragement. Any opposing vibration neutralizes the effect of the decree, delaying manifestation. Mental vigilance, therefore, is part of the ritual. Just as a gardener protects the planted seed from pests and drought, the practitioner must guard their mind from every thought contrary to abundance. To conclude this chapter, it is essential to stress that the word is law, not because superstition claims so, but because this is how the most ancient and advanced spiritual science operates. Whoever learns to decree with identity and certainty shapes matter and destiny with the precision of a cosmic architect. I am divine. Abundance is not a promise for the future, nor a simple wish. It is the irrevocable declaration that wealth already exists in the invisible plane and is manifesting now through awakened consciousness and the creative word. Thus the reader will understand that the true secret of all prosperity lies in the authority with which one defines their own identity and in the consistency with which one pronounces their sacred word. Chapter 4. The Spiritual Surgery of Scarcity, Healing Beliefs and Inherited Patterns. No prosperity decree, no matter how powerful, can sustain itself on ground where the deep roots of inherited scarcity grow. Florence Scovel Shinn observed that the human mind is not a blank slate, but a garden sown with foreign, familial, cultural and social thoughts that have taken root over generations. Most people fail in their relationship with money, not due to lack of talent or external opportunities, but because within themselves operate beliefs, emotions, and learned associations that sabotage, filter, and distort any attempt to prosper. Scarcity is not a natural condition of the universe. It is a received mental and emotional programming. Often, even before speaking a single word, Florence understood that every limiting belief functions like an invisible but active energetic tumor, occupying space and consuming the vital energy that could be directed toward creation, abundance, and manifestation. Money, as obedient energy, cannot flow through a channel saturated with contradictory messages, resentments, guilt, or unconscious loyalties to ancestral suffering. The first stage of spiritual surgery, therefore, consists of identifying the inherited thoughts and feelings that act as internal obstacles. The process is as methodical and rational as a medical intervention. Nothing is left to superficial intuition. Everything must be examined under the light of awakened consciousness and radical honesty. To begin, Florence guided her students to observe the phrases, emotions, and scenes associated with money from childhood. This involves recalling messages repeatedly spoken by parents, grandparents, teachers, and authority figures. Money is dirty. The rich are selfish. Money doesn't grow on trees. You can't have everything in life, and poverty is a virtue. These phrases, heard in childhood, become automatic mandates that, though invisible in adulthood, silently guide decisions, attitudes, and financial outcomes. The first step of spiritual surgery is to write down, without censorship or judgment, all beliefs and negative memories related to money that can be recalled. In making this mental inventory, it is not enough to merely observe the phrases. It is essential to identify the associated emotions. Florence insisted that emotion is the glue that fixes a belief in the subconscious. Perhaps a person remembers seeing their parents fight over money, feeling shame when receiving an expensive gift, or being humiliated for not being able to pay for something publicly. Each negative emotion linked to money operates as a silent program that orders one to avoid, reject, or sabotage any attempt to prosper. At this point, the reader must understand that scarcity is almost never the result of lack of resources, but of unconscious loyalty to an external system of beliefs. Once the roots are identified, Florence introduced the method of the divine witness, a process of detached internal observation in which the individual learns to look at their own beliefs as if they were a doctor examining another person's body. The divine witness does not judge or condemn. It simply observes, records, and acknowledges the presence of each belief as a transitory phenomenon, not as absolute truth. This stage is crucial because it allows one to deactivate emotional identification with inherited thoughts and prepare the ground for true transformation. The next phase of spiritual surgery is inner dialogue. Florence recommended sitting in silence with eyes closed, visualizing the moment or person who implanted the limiting belief. There, in that space of memory, the practitioner mentally dialogues with the authority figure, parent, teacher, grandparent, and expresses honestly, "I recognize that I learned this from you. I understand that you taught it from your own fear, experience, or ignorance. However, now I choose to release this belief because I recognize my divine right to abundance." The act of dialoguing with the origin of the mental program frees the emotional charge associated and returns personal responsibility to the present. The deepest step of the process is forgiveness. Florence taught that as long as resentment exists toward ancestors, authority figures, or even oneself for past financial mistakes, the channel of prosperity will remain partially blocked. Forgiveness does not mean justifying others' actions or denying experienced suffering, but deciding to stop carrying the weight of stories that are no longer relevant. Forgiveness is a spiritual surgery because it severs the energetic bonds of unconscious loyalty and allows vital energy to flow again toward the present and future. Florence suggested pronouncing aloud, "And with complete honesty, I forgive you for teaching me what you knew about money, even if it was not universal truth. I release you and myself to prosper according to divine law. This deep cleansing process may require several sessions of introspection. It is natural for resistances, doubts, or intense emotions to arise. The subconscious, accustomed to protecting its old program, tends to resist the intervention until it verifies that the new direction is safe and beneficial. Florence recommended practicing patience and consistency, as each dissolved layer of belief opened space for the installation of new prosperous patterns. The final stage of spiritual surgery is implanting the new programming. With a cleansed mind and an open heart, the individual can affirm, "Now I choose to believe that money is a divine expression that flows freely to me because I am a worthy and prepared channel. My abundance does not depend on sacrifice or luck, but on my conscious alignment with universal law." Florence insisted that this affirmation be repeated daily, especially after each cleansing session, and accompanied by small acts of congruence. Receiving with gratitude, giving with generosity, and always acting from the certainty of abundance. Florence observed that in many cases, the greatest obstacle to prosperity is not fear of lack, but fear of separating from the family or social group to which one has belonged out of emotional loyalty. Many unconsciously reject abundance to avoid betraying the history of effort, scarcity, or sacrifice of their ancestors. True spiritual surgery therefore requires blessing the family, honoring their struggles, and mentally declaring, "Thank you for everything you gave me. Now I choose to walk a different path and open a new legacy of prosperity for future generations." Throughout her practice, Florence documented numerous cases in which this process produced dramatic changes. Carmen, for example, broke a 4-generation pattern of poverty through forgiveness letters and visualizations in which she saw her ancestors giving her permission to prosper. Rosa, after forgiving a strict father who denigrated wealth, saw paths of abundance open that she had never imagined. The process was always internal first. External results followed. First the bond was healed, then tangible results appeared. As a complement to spiritual surgery, Florence recommended creating symbolic rituals, writing and burning letters to old beliefs, creating small altars of gratitude for money, or daily blessing one's own and others' prosperity. These actions, far from superstition, are psychological and energetic instruments that fix the new chosen programming in the body and mind. The essential point is that every act, word, and thought is aligned with the law of recognition and openness. The reader must understand clearly that no prosperity technique can bear fruit if the relationship with the past has not been healed. The subconscious, more loyal than any rational logic, will always seek to repeat what it believes necessary to belong and survive. Florence Scovel Shinn's spiritual surgery, executed with honesty, method, and patience, is the master key to release stuck energy and allow the free flow of universal abundance. The process culminates with an inductive question. To whom or what am I still tied in my relationship with money? The answer, when it arises from the heart, and not from guilt, allows one to release invisible chains and finally open to the wealth that life has been waiting to deliver. True financial freedom is not about accumulating more, but about mastering one's own mind and the invisible roots that nourish the tree of abundance. This is how Florence taught it, and this is how it can be experienced by anyone daring enough to observe, forgive, and choose. From today, a new inner inheritance begins. Chapter 5. Money as an ally, dialogue, respect, and conscious partnership. Few teachings have been as revolutionary, yet as simple to apply in daily life, as the art of treating money as a living ally, a spiritual partner that responds, observes, and collaborates with human consciousness. Florence Scovel Shinn, through her direct experience and the observation of countless cases, discovered that the nature of money is deeply relational and reflects with precision the quality of the treatment it receives. Just as a loyal friend approaches and cooperates when valued, listened to, and honored, money responds, multiplies, and manifests when received with respect and conscious dialogue. The most frequent and costly error in the human relationship with money is reducing it to a mere instrument, an inert object lacking personality, sensitivity, or memory. This approach, inherited from a materialistic and fragmented worldview, turns money into a source of worry, struggle, or rejection. Florence warned that in reality, money is a form of living energy endowed with intelligence that transcends mere accounting logic. and responds precisely to the words, emotions, and expectations of the individual. The first transformation that anyone seeking authentic prosperity must undertake is therefore to shift the paradigm from seeing money as an enemy, problem, or mere tool to recognizing it as an ally, teacher, and spiritual partner. Florence's original technique begins with the seemingly unusual act of speaking directly to money, not from fear, need, or complaint, but from respect and collaboration. Each morning, by holding a sum of money in the hands, large or small, coins, bills, or even a symbolic representation, a moment of stillness and concentration is established. The practitioner must look at the money, perceive it as a living presence, and speak with a clear tone and serene authority. Dear money, I honor and respect you. You are my divine ally, and come to me multiplied and blessed. I welcome you into my life with infinite gratitude. This seemingly simple gesture reprograms the subconscious connection with the energy of money and generates a vibrational atmosphere conducive to the circulation and growth of abundance. The key to this technique is intention and tone. Florence warned that merely repeating phrases like an automaton is not enough. If the voice trembles, if the words are infused with doubt, sarcasm, or resentment, the effect will be null or even counterproductive. Serene authority, sincere gratitude, and an attitude of equal partnership are indispensable for money to perceive a genuine invitation to collaborate. In this context, words are the energetic bond that seals the alliance, just as an agreement between friends is strengthened by honesty and respect. The relationship with money is solidified by consciously recognizing its presence and role in material life. Unlike other approaches based on visualization or mere affirmation, Florence's dialogue method includes an essential and rarely taught element, inner listening. Once the greeting and acknowledgement are spoken, the practitioner remains in silence for a few moments, ready to perceive subtle responses in the form of intuitions, ideas, sensations, or spontaneous impulses. Florence documented that money speaks through unexpected channels. It may inspire a business idea, suggest an opportunity, warn against unnecessary spending, or point the way to expansion. Active listening, free of anxiety or rigid expectations, transforms a monologue into a true dialogue and allows conscious collaboration with the energy of prosperity. Numerous cases collected by Florence testify to the power of this art. Marg, for example, a widow with children and severe financial difficulties, transformed her reality when she began to dialogue each morning with her coins, expressing gratitude and blessing even the smallest amounts. What initially seemed like a ridiculous act soon manifested in unexpected opportunities, multiplied income, and a sense of confidence never before experienced. As she wrote to Florence, money began to arrive like a friend who had finally been recognized and valued. Sarah, an artist initially reluctant about material matters, experienced a personal revolution by apologizing to money for years of rejection and disdain, opening the channel for sales and contracts that had never before appeared. Within this art of dialogue, Florence taught two fundamental rituals that consolidate the alliance and circulation of abundance: the loving farewell ritual when spending and the conscious welcome ritual when receiving. The first involves blessing money each time it leaves our hands, through a purchase, payment, or investment, mentally saying, "Dear money, I release you with love so that you may bless others and return to me multiplied tenfold." Far from superstition, this gesture embodies impeccable vibrational logic. When money is released with gratitude and trust, the energy accompanying it is expansive and attractive, ensuring its return through unexpected paths. The second ritual, the conscious welcome, involves receiving every sum of money, no matter how small, with gratitude and recognition. Instead of taking any income or gain for granted, one pauses to declare, "Blessed money, I receive you with joy and gratitude. You are a sign of the abundance flowing through me. You are welcome in my life and my service." This practice raises the vibration of the receiver, strengthens self-esteem, and consolidates the alliance with the energy of prosperity. Florence insisted that money, when received with appreciation, tends to stay and multiply. When ignored, devalued, or received with guilt, it tends to vanish. Both rituals are grounded in the law of conscious respect. Just as no human relationship thrives under abuse, indifference, or fear, No relationship with money can flourish without being founded on respect, gratitude, and willingness to collaborate. Every transaction, no matter how insignificant, becomes an act of communication and sacred alliance when buying, selling, investing, or donating. The practitioner mentally repeats words of blessing, trust, and gratitude, knowing that all energy sent returns multiplied. The result of this practice, when maintained with consistency and honesty, is a radical transformation of financial experience. Fear of scarcity dissolves, anxiety over payments becomes positive expectation, and a sense of dependence is replaced by active collaboration with the forces of abundance. Florence confirmed that when money is treated as an ally, partner, and friend, its flow becomes constant, predictable, and full of unexpected opportunities. The reader must understand rationally that a conscious relationship with money is not a psychological trick, but the restoration of a universal truth. All energy responds to the quality of attention and treatment it receives. Money as energy in motion requires recognition, respect, and dialogue to flow, grow, and remain. To deny, reject, or fear, money is to close the door to one of the most powerful channels of blessing and service in the material plane. The conscious alliance with money, taught by Florence Scovel Shinn, is not the privilege of a few, nor does it require special talent. It is a practice open to anyone willing to abandon the mindset of struggle and scarcity and embrace the higher logic of collaboration and service. Money, far from being an end in itself, is the travel companion the universe has provided for the personal and collective fulfillment of every soul. Thus, the act of speaking to money, bidding it farewell with love, and receiving it with gratitude becomes the foundation of a harmonious, stable, and expansive financial life. Money ceases to be a problem and transforms into an ally, mirror, and teacher. Those who adopt this practice eventually see that all external reality is but a faithful reflection of their internal dialogue and the quality of their relationship with what was once feared or rejected. Money now responds like a loyal friend. It comes, stays, and multiplies whenever treated with the dignity and respect it deserves as sacred energy in the economy of the universe. Chapter 6. Ritual and Sacred Routine, Daily Practices for Multiplication. Spiritual and material progress is not the result of sporadic impulses or disorderly efforts, but of the methodical and patient construction of habits aligned with universal law. Florence Scovel Shinn understood long before many of her contemporaries that prosperity does not arrive by accident or chance, but as the fruit of discipline, conscious attention, and the sacred repetition of acts that anchor the mind in the frequency of abundance. Ritual, far from being superstition or empty custom, is the most precise instrument human consciousness possesses to transform the invisible into the visible and to keep the will aligned with the flow of prosperity. The internal logic of the rituals proposed by Florence lies in the nature of the subconscious, which responds less to logical arguments than to the repetition of gestures, symbols, and words charged with intention. The subconscious, like fertile soil, is tilled and sown by routine. Wherever an act is repeated consciously, a deep furrow is created through which the desired energy flows. For this reason, lasting prosperity is always the result of a sacred routine, a set of daily practices that, when performed with full attention, make abundance a natural and permanent state. The first essential ritual is the creation of an altar of abundance. This altar, far from being an external object of worship, serves as a visible reminder of the alliance between the individual and the principle of universal prosperity. Florence taught her students to dedicate a small space in the home for this purpose, placing physical money, bills and coins, surrounded by symbols of wealth, a white candle, fresh flowers, a glass of water, and if possible, a gold or silver coin. Each element serves a specific metaphysical function. Money represents the material substance to be multiplied. The candle, the light of consciousness. The flowers, life and renewal. The water, the flow of energy. And the precious metal, the vibrational anchor of wealth in the physical plane. Every morning upon waking, the candle is lit, the money is blessed, and gratitude is expressed in advance for the abundance on its way. The second ritual is the letter to money. Florence discovered that writing letters by hand to money, expressing gratitude, forgiveness, purposes, and desires, has the effect of reprogramming the subconscious connection. The act of writing fixes intention in the material plane, translates thought into action, and facilitates honest dialogue with the energy of prosperity. These letters can be read aloud in front of the altar, reinforcing the power of the decree and the clarity of purpose. Florence documented that consistency in this practice produces a remarkable change in the internal perception of money, facilitating its arrival and multiplication. The third ritual involves the combined use of the candle, water, and coin. Each morning, before beginning any activity, the candle is lit as a symbol of light, the coin is held in the left hand, and the glass of water in the right. For 3 minutes of silence, the practitioner visualizes money circulating as a luminous current flowing uninterruptedly from the altar into their life, purifying all fear, doubt, or sense of lack. At the end, the water is drunk slowly with the conviction that the vibration of universal abundance is being absorbed. This seemingly simple sequence impresses upon the body and mind the certainty of being aligned with divine supply. The fourth ritual is the mirror routine, central to Florence's teaching. Every day, after the preceding rituals, the practitioner stands before a mirror and repeats the formula, "I am divine abundance," looking directly into their own eyes. The recommended number of repetitions is 33, as repetition anchors identity and the direct gaze seals the decree in the subconscious mind. The importance of maintaining an upright, calm posture, deep breathing, and a firm, confident voice free from hesitation is absolute. During this process, it is vital to feel and sustain the emotion of certainty, avoiding any leakage of doubt or sarcasm. Florence found that daily repetition for at least 90 uninterrupted days produces a radical transformation in self-image and in the ability to receive and sustain abundance. Alongside these main rituals, Florence taught the ritual of blessing money before spending. Each time money is spent, on a purchase, payment, or investment, a brief moment is taken to declare, "Blessed money, I release you with love, return to me multiplied, and bless those who receive you." This simple gesture, repeated consciously, transforms the act of spending, traditionally associated with fear, loss, or sacrifice, into an act of vibrational sowing, ensuring the return of money through unexpected channels. Money, as living energy, responds to the vibration with which it is sent. If released with gratitude and trust, it returns multiplied. If given with fear or resentment, it tends to drift away or stagnate. Florence demonstrated in practice that ritual consistency is the key to permanent results. Cases documented by her show that those who practice these rituals sporadically achieve fleeting or unstable results, whereas those who make them a sacred routine experience growing, stable, and increasingly natural prosperity. The subconscious, re-educated by conscious repetition, replaces old beliefs of scarcity with the unshakable certainty of being a channel for infinite wealth. The metaphysical logic behind each element of the ritual is profound and rational. The altar fixes attention and intention. The candle symbolizes the light of consciousness, dissolving ignorance. The water channels energy and facilitates the flow of experience. The coin anchors the vibration of wealth in the physical body. The letter to money establishes honest and transparent dialogue. The mirror reinforces identity and a prosperous self-image. Blessing before spending and receiving transforms every transaction into an act of sowing and harvesting. All is designed to make prosperity a daily experience, not a distant or abstract ideal. Florence observed that the greatest enemy of prosperity is inconsistency, the tendency to abandon practice as soon as the first results appear, or to replace the ritual with scattered, directionless efforts. Conscious repetition sustained by anticipated gratitude is the key to permanent multiplication. Giving thanks before receiving, blessing before spending, affirming a prosperous identity before evidence confirms it. These are the principles that transform chance into certainty and hope into reality. The reader must understand that ritual is not magic, but the art of training the mind and body to live in harmony with the universal law of abundance. Prosperity is not an isolated event, but a state of consciousness anchored in daily routine. When every gesture, word, and thought is aligned with wealth, money ceases to be a sporadic visitor and becomes a permanent, loyal, and generous resident. At the end of this chapter, the message is unmistakable. Whoever establishes a sacred routine, honors rituals consistently, and repeats them with conscious gratitude inevitably becomes a channel of unlimited multiplication. This is what Florence demonstrated, what her students experienced, and what anyone can achieve by dedicating each day to the art of conscious abundance. Chapter 7. The Demand and Supply Method. Abundance as a right, not a favor. One of the most persistent confusions in the human mind, and one of the main causes of chronic lack, is the mistaken identification between desire and legitimate demand. While desire, no matter how intense, remains tied to the idea of scarcity, demand, when founded on the awareness of divine right, opens invisible channels that no supplication can unlock. Florence Scovel Shinn observed throughout her life that most people beg the universe like spiritual mendicants, asking favors from higher forces they perceive as distant or external. However, the cosmic law of abundance responds only to those who act as legitimate heirs of universal wealth, claiming what already belongs to them by spiritual lineage. Florence explained that desire is, at its root, the affirmation that something is lacking, that one does not have what is necessary, and therefore keeps the individual vibrating at the frequency of need. Desire, even when sincere, sends the universe a message of insufficiency, reinforcing the cycle of waiting and postponement. By contrast, demand does not arise from lack, but from internal recognition of legitimate ownership. The one who demands knows that what is claimed is not a gift or an exception, but the natural expression of a right inscribed in the very essence of being, just as a king's child does not ask for permission to enter the palace. The cosmic heir does not beg for what is theirs by nature. The protocol of cosmic demand, as taught by Florence, consists of several precise and rational steps. Step 1. Clear identification of the demand. The first step is to identify clearly what is being demanded, without ambiguity or vagueness. The universe responds to specificity. Vague requests generate imprecise results. Therefore, before issuing the demand, the practitioner sits in silence and visualizes exactly what they wish to manifest: the amount, purpose, and impact on their life and on the lives of others. Once the object of the demand is defined, it is declared aloud with serene authority and absolute conviction. By my divine right as a channel of abundance, I demand that the necessary resources to manifest this clearly be released here and now, in accordance with the perfect order of the universe. Step 2. Emotional alignment with the identity of cosmic heir. Florence emphasized that effective demand cannot be executed from fear, guilt, or feelings of unworthiness. The individual must remember and affirm, I am not asking for a favor, I am claiming my inheritance. This act of spiritual remembrance restores the dignity and self-esteem necessary for the vibration of demand to be heard and answered by the invisible laws governing material manifestation. Step 3. Active willingness to receive. Many people, even after making a demand, block the arrival of abundance due to an inability to receive, fear of change, or unconscious loyalties to suffering. Florence recommended preparing one's life and environment as one would for the arrival of an important guest, cleaning the space, organizing finances, and staying attentive to signs and unexpected opportunities. Abundance responds not only to the spoken word, but also to the vibrational environment in which it manifests. Step 4. Congruent action. Demand without action is an illusion. Having issued the demand, the practitioner must act as if the fulfillment of their order is already underway. This involves making decisions, investing time and resources, and maintaining the attitude of certainty, appropriate to one who knows the result is inevitable. Florence illustrated this principle with the example of a farmer who, after sowing the seed, prepares the harvest trusting in the natural order. Florence detailed the consequences of adopting the identity of cosmic heir through concrete examples. She recounted the case of Rosa, who, after years of praying for a financial solution, transformed her reality when she began to demand, declaring, I now claim all resources that are rightfully mine by divine law. The difference was radical. Where there had once been waiting and resignation, there was now opportunity, unexpected inheritance, and multiplication of resources. Florence documented that the universe responds precisely to the vibration of certainty and legitimacy. An essential component of this method is the transformation from a mindset of competition to a mindset of creation. Florence warned that competition implies scarcity, the idea that resources are limited and one must fight for a share. This vision keeps the individual in a state of stress and rivalry, weakening their capacity for creation and expansion. Creation, by contrast, recognizes that the source of abundance is infinite and that each person has a unique gift to manifest wealth in original ways, without taking from anyone else. Instead of copying, envying, or competing, the creator seeks new ways to serve, innovate, and add value, generating virtuous cycles of prosperity. Practical exercises accompany this teaching. Florence suggested that each morning, before beginning any activity, the reader write precisely what they are demanding from the universe, along with the reason they consider it a legitimate right. Throughout the day, they observe themselves. Am I acting as an heir or as a beggar? Do I receive with dignity or reject with guilt? Do I feel compelled to compete, or do I allow myself to create from authenticity? These acts of self-observation and continuous adjustment consolidate the identity necessary to sustain the vibrational demand. Florence was emphatic in pointing out that true spiritual royalty is not measured by the amount of money accumulated, but by the internal attitude of legitimate ownership, absolute confidence, and generous service. Money under this conscious regime becomes the reflection of self-image. Those who recognize themselves as worthy receive. Those who doubt postpone their inheritance. Those who demand arrogantly close channels. Those who demand with humble certainty activate the law of perfect supply. At the close of this chapter, the reader must understand that abundance is not a matter of luck or external privilege, but of internal alignment with universal law. Desire is human, demand is divine. Those who demand from the consciousness of being heirs find the doors open that desire alone never forced. Thus, the individual becomes the king of their financial realm, not by external decree, but by inner legitimacy. Conscious demand is the language of the children of abundance, and its consistent practice transforms life itself into fertile ground where wealth grows, multiplies, and serves the common good, just as Florence Scovel Shinn taught. Chapter 8. Divine Design, Precise Visualization, and Ordering the Invisible. Conscious creation of financial reality is not, according to Florence Scovel Shinn, a passive process of waiting for miracles, nor a simple succession of vague hopes cast into the air in search of a response. It is an art and a science that requires clarity, precision, and congruence between thought, word, and action. Florence taught that the universe does not respond to ambiguous pleas or indeterminate requests, but to detailed plans and clear orders. Within this principle lies the fundamental difference between those who experience powerful manifestations and those who endlessly repeat desires without tangible results. Divine design is the deliberate act of visualizing the ideal financial life in all its details, like an architect who leaves nothing to improvisation. Florence compared the human mind to a celestial architect. The architect does not begin construction without a complete, precise, and coherent plan. Likewise, the consciousness aspiring to prosper must first define with exactitude the shape, size, function, and impact of the wealth it wishes to manifest. Vague requests such as, "I want more money" or "I would like to prosper," do not activate the law of manifestation, as they lack the specificity that allows the universe to organize the resources and circumstances necessary for their fulfillment. Florence instructed her students to dedicate time each day to precise visualization. This process begins with the clear identification of the financial goal. How much money is needed? In what time frame? Through which means? And what will be the impact on one's own life and the lives of others? It is not about imagining abstract sums, but about seeing, feeling, and hearing the complete reality. Money in hand, bills counted, deposits confirmed, purchases made, projects executed, and the satisfaction of contributing to both personal and collective good. Visualization must involve all the senses, creating a mental experience so vivid that the subconscious recognizes it as real and begins to mobilize the energies necessary for its materialization. The next step is ordering the universe for the exact manifestation of the visualized design. Florence distinguished between mere desire, which waits passively, and the order, which actively mobilizes invisible forces. After defining the design, the practitioner declares aloud with authority and certainty, "This is my divine design. I order it to manifest in my physical reality according to the perfect order of the universe." This declaration, made with conviction, is the ultimate creative act. It is not about manipulating circumstances, but positioning oneself as a co-creator, acknowledging the divine right to order reality from aligned consciousness. The difference between vague requests and clear orders lies in the vibrational quality of the message sent. A vague request is a scattered thought that sets neither direction nor goal, producing imprecise results or none at all. A clear order, on the other hand, establishes a precise coordinate on the map of the mental and emotional universe, summoning resources, people, ideas, and opportunities for its fulfillment. Florence warned her students to be as specific as an engineer, as committed as a contractor, and as vigilant as a construction supervisor. Wealth, to manifest, requires complete instructions and conscious follow-through. To strengthen this art, Florence developed the mental abundance map method. It involves taking paper and pencil and literally drawing the desired financial scenario: figures, images, names, places, objects, experiences. Next to each image, keywords are written that describe the feeling and purpose of each element: tranquility, expansion, service, freedom. The mental map should be placed in a visible location and reviewed daily, feeding the subconscious with a clear image of the intended goal. This practice is neither childish nor naive. It is the visual translation of the internal decree that informs both the mind and the universe about the chosen new reality. Florence explained that congruence between vision and action is indispensable. To visualize without acting is to dream in vain. To act without vision is to work blindly. Once the divine design is established and its manifestation ordered, the practitioner must behave, decide, and speak as though already living in that reality. This involves avoiding words of scarcity, rejecting opportunities that contradict the purpose, surrounding oneself with people and environments that reinforce a prosperous mindset, and maintaining an attitude of certainty even when visible facts appear contrary. The universe, upon receiving clear and consistent signals, reorganizes circumstances to materialize what has been visualized. Numerous cases documented by Florence illustrate the effectiveness of this method. Maria, one of her students, mentally designed her ideal business, detailing everything from the amount of income to the number of clients, location, and service purpose. For months she maintained her mental map and daily decree, rejecting any offer that did not align with her design. Finally, the right opportunities appeared in perfect sequence, confirming that specificity and consistency are the keys to manifestation. Another case, Elena's, demonstrates how a lack of detail in visualization leads to ambiguous results. When asking to improve her financial situation, she received temporary jobs and scattered sums, but not the sustained stability and abundance she desired. Only when she clarified her vision and ordered its manifestation did she experience definitive change. To strengthen the reader's creative capacity, Florence proposed daily exercises, dedicating 5 minutes each morning to mentally reviewing the divine design, writing down every detail, reviewing the mental map at midday and before sleep, giving thanks for the manifestation in progress, feeling anticipatory gratitude for its fulfillment. She also suggested weekly evaluation of the congruence between thought, word, and action, making adjustments as needed to eliminate contradictions and reinforce alignment. The final teaching of this chapter is clear. The universe is a field of infinite possibilities, but it responds powerfully only to those who send complete plans, precise orders, and maintain congruence until final materialization. Wealth is not a random phenomenon, but the result of a mental and emotional design aligned with universal law. The reader who adopts this method will discover that the true miracle is not receiving by chance, but manifesting at will, just as Florence Scovel Shinn taught and demonstrated. Chapter 9. Maintaining a prosperous consciousness. Protect, expand, and renew. Achieving the manifestation of abundance is only the first half of the journey. The more subtle and often more decisive task is to maintain the prosperous consciousness that allowed it to arrive. Florence Scovel Shinn observed that many people, after experiencing initial success, unknowingly fall back into old mental habits of scarcity, gradually losing the fruits of their spiritual work. Maintaining prosperity is not a matter of luck, but of vibrational discipline and conscious protection against internal and external forces that tend to erode a wealth mindset. One of the most insidious and least understood dangers is poor conversations. Florence documented how even the most advanced practitioners could sabotage their prosperity by participating in dialogues filled with complaint, criticism, fear of the future, or glorification of scarcity. Each word repeated with conviction reinforces a vibrational circuit in the mind and environment. Talking about crises, difficulties, inflation, debts, or economic injustice reactivates the old scarcity pattern that conscious work seeks to overcome. For this reason, Florence instructed her students to abstain from participating in, or even listening to, impoverished conversations, limiting exposure to news, environments, and people that cultivate a scarcity mindset. Exposure to negative news is another erosive factor. The constant flow of information laden with fear, economic catastrophes, crisis predictions, and unemployment statistics acts as a slow poison, weakening confidence and reinstalling fear in the subconscious. Florence recommended rigorously selecting informational stimuli, dedicating minimal time to external news, and prioritizing contact with success stories, prosperity books, and abundance testimonies. The mind, like the body, is nourished by what it consumes. By choosing prosperous stimuli, one strengthens a wealth-conscious mind and closes the door to doubt and fear. The importance of surrounding oneself with prosperous stimuli cannot be overstated. Florence suggested creating environments that inspire wealth, images of abundance, affirmative phrases, cheerful music, vibrant colors, and, above all, the company of optimistic, generous, and successful people. The vibration of those around us directly influences our mental field. Seek the company of those who celebrate success. Give thanks for blessings and expect the best from the universe. This is a vibrational investment that multiplies the fruits of spiritual practice. The daily practice of gratitude is the cornerstone of prosperous maintenance. Florence taught giving anticipatory thanks every morning for both visible and invisible abundance, for what has been received and for what is on the way. Gratitude practiced as discipline transforms a reactive mind into a creative mind. Those who give thanks retain and multiply. Those who forget to give thanks stagnate the flow of blessings. At least 3 times a day, upon waking, at midday, and before sleeping, the practitioner mentally or in writing details all the ways abundance manifests in their life, including the smallest and most subtle forms. Conscious blessing of every income and expense is another fundamental exercise. Upon receiving money, goods, or favors, take a moment to declare, "I bless this abundance and give thanks for its multiplication in my life and in the lives of all involved." When spending or investing, repeat, "I bless this money and release it so that it returns multiplied." This practice is not mere rhetoric. It reprograms the mind to associate all energy circulation with growth and return, dissolving the old fear of loss and scarcity. Mental protection, according to Florence, is the active defense against relapsing into a poverty consciousness. Each time a thought of fear, doubt, unworthiness, or resignation arises, the practitioner identifies it, recognizes it as foreign to their new identity, and consciously replaces it with a prosperity affirmation. For example, when the thought, "I cannot afford this," appears, respond immediately, "I am always supported by the infinite abundance of the universe." Mental vigilance, far from being constant tension, becomes second nature, a reflective attitude that detects and corrects deviations before they consolidate. Florence taught that preventing relapses requires recognizing early signs of returning to the old mindset: excessive fear of the future, guilt for receiving, difficulty spending or investing, envy of others' success, tendency to complain, or feelings of stagnation. At the appearance of any of these symptoms, the practitioner should intensify gratitude, visualization, affirmation, and blessing practices, reinforcing neural circuits of abundance before old patterns re-establish themselves. Mental renewal is a continuous process. Florence recommended varying affirmations, renewing mental abundance maps, incorporating new images, writing periodic letters to money, and constantly aligning financial goals with spiritual purpose. Stagnation signals an empty routine. Creativity in spiritual practice keeps enthusiasm alive and maintains the expectation of new manifestations. The ultimate goal is the transformation of abundance into a permanent state, living wealth not as an occasional event, but as a natural, irreversible condition of personal identity. To achieve this, Florence suggested creating virtuous cycles of prosperity, giving to receive, investing to grow, teaching to learn, celebrating others' success to magnetize one's own. By turning every act of prosperity into a seed for more abundance in one's life and the lives of others, the practitioner establishes wealth as law, not exception. Creating a legacy of vibrational wealth is the ultimate result of this discipline. Florence taught that well-sustained prosperity not only transforms the individual's life, but also that of their family, surroundings, and descendants. Mental and emotional patterns of abundance can be transmitted just as scarcity patterns are, creating future generations with a healthy, natural relationship with wealth. The teaching, example, and daily presence of the practitioner become a beacon for those around them, consolidating the expansive cycle of prosperous consciousness. In conclusion, maintaining abundance is an art requiring attention, rigor, and creativity. Protecting the mind from scarcity contamination, expanding the limits of gratitude, and constantly renewing vision and habits are the pillars of solid, permanent, and irreversible prosperity. This was how Florence Scovel Shinn lived and taught it, and this is how any reader can experience it by making their prosperous consciousness their greatest treasure and legacy. Chapter 10. Money as inner teacher, self-esteem, service, and the perfect expression of the self. On the path to true prosperity, there comes a moment when money ceases to be merely an external resource and becomes a faithful mirror of the inner world. Florence Scovel Shinn taught that money is the most precise thermometer of self-esteem, a silent teacher that reveals, without judgment but without error, the level of self-worth each individual holds. Every fluctuation in financial flow is ultimately a direct reflection of the internal image the individual projects into the invisible field of universal abundance. The central principle is unavoidable. The relationship with money always mirrors the relationship one has with oneself. Those who doubt their own value will find that money hesitates to come close. Those who fear receiving will experience delays, losses, and difficulties. Those who associate prosperity with guilt will unknowingly sabotage every opportunity that comes their way. Florence argued with logic and detailed examples that no decree, ritual, or visualization can sustainably overcome the self-image each person holds as an unconscious truth. For this reason, deep financial healing begins with the transformation of self-esteem. The individual must learn to see themselves and treat themselves as a worthy channel of wealth, an unconditional recipient of all the blessings life can offer. Money then becomes an inner teacher, not a relentless judge but an impartial guide. Its presence or absence is not punishment or arbitrary reward, but the mechanical result of the prevailing vibration. Florence illustrated this principle with the story of Sarah, an artist who rejected prosperity for years, believing that sacrifice and scarcity were spiritual virtues. Only when she recognized the value of her talent and allowed herself to receive with gratitude and dignity did the flow of money multiply, opening doors and possibilities that had previously remained closed. Self-esteem is not arrogance, but the humble acknowledgement of the divine nature within each person, which demands recognition and manifestation. The next major discovery is the relationship between loving service and the flow of abundance. Florence observed that money seeks pure channels, free from resentment and selfish calculation. Wealth that remains and grows is that which circulates through genuine service, activities born of dedication, authenticity, and the desire to contribute to the well-being of others. The individual who dedicates their life to service, in whatever form, becomes a natural recipient of money, as it responds to energy of expansion, generosity, and usefulness. Florence explained it this way. Money is God in action, seeking to bless the world through you. Who are you to deny divinity this expression? Money that flows freely and with purpose always answers the question, how can I serve best? Discovering the perfect expression of the self is the culmination of this process. According to Florence, there is no universally prosperous activity, Each soul must find its own channel of manifestation. The perfect expression is that in which the individual experiences joy, dedication, and a sense of purpose. It is the occupation one could perform even without pay, yet paradoxically attracts the greatest abundance, precisely because of the authenticity and love with which it is performed. Florence guided her students to recall their golden childhood memories. What activities did you perform with pleasure before learning about utility, profit, or competition? Within those memories lies the seed of purpose and the key to aligning vocation with prosperity. The transition from victim to conscious collaborator is the natural result of this path. While the victim feels at the mercy of external forces, blaming money, the economy, or fate, the collaborator recognizes their inner power and takes responsibility for their vibration, beliefs, and decisions. Money ceases to be an enemy or problem and transforms into an ally willing to serve the greater good. Florence documented the story of Rosa, who, after a deep financial crisis, realized she needed to stop blaming circumstances and begin consciously dialoguing with money. The discipline of recognizing her value, serving others, and acting from the certainty of her dignity opened doors to new opportunities and resources, eventually transforming her into a prosperous entrepreneur and mentor to other women. The exercises proposed to integrate this chapter are clear and rational. The reader should daily observe their internal dialogue regarding dignity, worthiness, and the ability to receive. Facing a mirror and holding money in their hands, they should declare, "I am worthy of unlimited abundance because I am the perfect expression of God on earth." Repeat this affirmation until it is fully felt, noting any resistance or discomfort, as this reveals the root of the block to be healed. Before undertaking any productive activity, declare, "Beloved money, flow through this work and bless all those touched by my service." In this way, work becomes prayer, and every productive act becomes a channel of abundance. Maintaining self-esteem requires vigilance and practice. Avoid comparisons, cultivate self-appreciation, give thanks for received gifts, and forgive past mistakes. These are concrete steps to strengthen the internal foundation upon which external prosperity is built. Florence emphasized that money is not a substitute for internal valuation, but its inevitable consequence. Those who respect themselves are respected by life and by the energy of money. Finally, the deepest lesson: money is reflection, not cause. Every external transformation must begin within. Awareness of dignity, a vocation of service, and authentic self-expression are the invisible foundations of all solid and lasting prosperity. Florence Scovel Shinn taught that money is a faithful messenger, a willing collaborator, and a silent teacher. Those who learn to listen to and honor it discover in money not only a resource but a constant opportunity to grow, serve, and express divine purpose on earth. Chapter 11. Breaking Ancestral Patterns, Healing the Lineage, and Creating a Legacy of Abundance. One of the most persistent obstacles to manifesting abundance does not lie in personal experience, but in the memories and patterns inherited through the family lineage. Florence Scovel Shinn understood that money carries not only individual memory, but also collective memory. The stories, beliefs, and emotions passed down by ancestors, sometimes unspoken but intensely felt, deeply and often unconsciously, shape each person's relationship with prosperity. For this reason, no individual work on wealth can be considered complete without healing the financial lineage. Detecting and breaking inherited scarcity patterns requires radical self-observation and honesty. Florence taught her students to ask themselves objectively and without judgment, what phrases did I hear from my parents and grandparents about money? What stories repeated in my family regarding luck, sacrifice, or financial difficulty? How were the rich and prosperous perceived? The answers to these questions reveal the foundations upon which each person's financial consciousness has been built. If money in the family environment was a source of worry, argument, guilt, or shame, it is likely that the same pattern remains active, invisibly guiding decisions and emotions. Honoring and forgiving the ancestors is the next essential step. Florence explained that rejecting or blaming parents and grandparents for their scarcity mindset only reinforces the original wound. Healing occurs through recognizing that each generation did the best it could, given its circumstances, beliefs, and level of awareness. The act of honoring does not imply approving or perpetuating lack, but acknowledging the effort, love, and resilience that enabled family survival and progress. Forgiveness, in turn, frees the individual from the unconscious obligation to repeat stories of limitation to remain loyal to family memory. Florence developed a precise and rational technique for this work, the letter to the ancestors. The exercise consists of writing a conscious and heartfelt letter to the ancestors who have had the greatest influence on one's perception of money. In the letter, one acknowledges the legacy received, expresses gratitude for sacrifices and efforts, and clearly states the decision to create a new pact with abundance. For example, "Dear grandparents, dear parents, I recognize and give thanks for everything you did so that I am here today. I understand that your beliefs and fears regarding money arose from your context and your own wounds. Today I choose to honor your story, but I also choose to free myself from all inherited limitation. I declare from this moment that in my life and that of my descendants, abundance is a natural and permanent law. Allow me to prosper to honor your memory and open new paths for those who come after me." This letter can be read aloud, kept in a special place, or even ritually burned, symbolizing the release of old bonds. Family blessing visualization is another powerful tool. Florence suggested that the reader imagine all their ancestors gathered around, forming a circle of protection and support. Visualize a golden light radiating from one's own heart, bathing and blessing each member of the family tree, filling their faces with peace, understanding, and gratitude. In this mental act, one can imagine the ancestors smiling and granting permission to prosper without guilt or fear. This type of visualization reinforces the bond of love while dissolving the obligation to perpetuate scarcity. Establishing new generational prosperity contracts is the next and decisive step. Florence proposed a symbolic and practical act, verbally declaring, with money in hand, the new agreement that will govern oneself and descendants. For example, "Beloved money, at this moment I break all scarcity patterns in my family lineage. I establish a new legacy of abundance for future generations. From today onward, wealth flows freely in this family. So it is, so it shall be." This decree is not mere suggestion, it is a vibrational reprogramming that the subconscious and the family field receive as a new order, gradually displacing old patterns. Florence meticulously analyzed how money carries collective memory, and how each reader can be a turning point in their family tree. Every time a person heals their relationship with abundance, they not only transform their own life, but also elevate the vibration of the entire lineage, offering new possibilities to children, grandchildren, and nieces or nephews, even if they never meet them. It is common that after performing these exercises, other family members begin to experience financial improvements or mindset shifts, as if one person's liberation opens unexpected paths for all. Exercises and stories illustrate this process of liberation and creation of a new, prosperous lineage. Carmen, a student of Florence, came from a family marked by generations of hard work with little reward. After identifying the phrases and attitudes limiting her relationship with money, she wrote the letter, performed the family visualization, and declared the new contract. Within months, not only did her income increase and her attitude change, but her younger sister and niece also began receiving unexpected job offers and growth opportunities. The transformation of one resonates through all like an expanding wave of freedom and possibility. The true greatness of this process lies in understanding that each person can be the inflection point, the conscious link that chooses to break the history of lack and establish a legacy of abundance for those who come after. Florence Scovel Shinn taught that lineage healing is neither selfish nor individualistic, but the highest act of love, generosity, and spiritual responsibility. By doing so, the reader becomes the root of a new family tree, one where wealth, joy, and freedom are the natural and undisputed inheritance of all its members. Chapter 12. The Miracle of Sacred Communication, Everyday Abundance, and Ultimate Mastery. As the reader ascends each step of Florence Scovel Shinn's wisdom, they arrive at the threshold of mastery, a state where communication with money becomes as natural, fluid, and respectful as the internal dialogue each person maintains with themselves. Here, the miracle ceases to be an exceptional event and becomes the habitual atmosphere, and everyday abundance is perceived not as a random privilege, but as the logical consequence of a consciousness aligned with the uninterrupted flow of universal provision. The full integration of Florence's teachings consists of understanding that money has never been separate from the human being, but has always responded silently and faithfully to every word, thought, and attitude. At this stage, the reader has already learned to see money as an ally, a teacher, and a mirror. They have practiced decrees and precise visualization, healed lineages, forgiven ancestors, and written new pages in the book of their financial consciousness. However, the true revolution occurs when communication with money is no longer a forced or programmed act, but a living, permanent conversation, as spontaneous as breathing. Florence observed that those who reach this level of sacred communication experience a total transformation of financial anxiety. Worry about the future, fear of loss, and the urgency to control every detail disappear, giving way to serene confidence in money's reliability as a tireless collaborator. It is not that material difficulties vanish, but the mind and heart no longer succumb to them. There exists a certainty so deep in divine provision that the individual behaves as one who knows their invisible ally is always present, attentive, and ready to meet every need before it even arises. Money that anticipates needs is not superstition or illusion. It is the logical result of an internal vibration perfectly aligned with abundance. Florence taught that at the mastery stage, money begins to arrive before the desire is even consciously formulated. The practitioner is surprised to receive resources, opportunities, and solutions that resolve problems or facilitate projects barely imagined. This is not benevolent chance, but the outcome of years of coherent communication, constant gratitude, and loving service, where money feels secure, welcomed, and fully trusted in that human channel. The logic of everyday miracles is perfectly explainable from Florence's perspective. The miracle is not an exception to the law, but its highest fulfillment. It is the consequence of living, thinking, and acting as a transparent channel for universal provision. Money, understood as conscious energy, responds to emotional stability, anticipated gratitude, and serene expectation. When the reader has become a habitual witness to these miracles, they understand that their main role is no longer to seek abundance, but to be a constant point of expression for abundance, both for themselves and for others. The deepest transition occurs when the individual abandons the posture of seeker and assumes that of a perpetual channel of blessing. Florence taught that the desperate search for abundance signals an immature consciousness. Spiritual maturity begins when a person recognizes that they are, by divine right, a conduit for unlimited wealth. This awareness translates into constant and conscious giving, sharing resources, teaching what has been learned, inspiring others, and supporting those still on the path. Money flowing through such a channel neither stagnates nor disappears. It returns multiplied, creating an endless virtuous cycle of prosperity. Practically, Florence recommended maintaining, even at mastery, the rituals that have sustained a prosperous consciousness: daily gratitude, blessing every coin received or given, respectful and loving dialogue with money, visualization of new projects, and generous teaching of all learned knowledge. The expansion of abundance occurs naturally when knowledge is shared and sown in other hearts. Each reader who, having transformed their life, becomes a beacon and guide for family, friends, or strangers, perpetuates Florence's legacy and expands the circle of blessing in humanity. The final state this book invites the reader to reach is to live in continuous miracle. This does not mean suspending logic or denying the reality of effort and dedication, but establishing a positive expectation, a steadfast certainty that the universe is always conspiring in favor of those who honor its internal laws. For Florence, the miracle is the natural consequence of a mind and heart that no longer fight, doubt, or demand, but recognize, give thanks, and collaborate with the forces of creation. In conclusion, the invitation is to cease being a spectator and become the conscious protagonist of one's own financial story. Sacred communication with money is an art, a discipline, and ultimately, a natural state. From this place, the reader becomes both witness and creator of miracles, expanding Florence Scovel Shinn's teachings as a legacy of light, freedom, and abundance for all generations.